Hello everyone, and welcome to the Bad Sydney Crime Writers Festival online event with Candice Fox. My name is Catherine Dupelou-Menager and I am the Artistic Director of Bad Sydney. Before going any further, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the country on which we meet, or virtually on which we all are today throughout Australia. We recognise the continuing connection of traditional owners to land, waters and culture, and pay our respects to their elders past and present. Now, if this is your first Bad Sydney event, you'll know possibly that we are a Crime Writers Festival, but we're not just a festival. We do a lot more. We run these online events before our festival in September at the State Library of New South Wales, 9 to the 12th of September this year. We have events in person at libraries throughout Sydney. We also have, or about to have, a podcast. So jump onto our website and have a look to see what exciting things we're doing. Now tonight we're welcoming crime writer extraordinaire, Candice Fox. She joins us to talk about her new book, The Chase. I've got a reading copy, so it's not quite as handsome as the proper copy, but we'll be looking at that in a minute. Candice is the author of, I think it's 8 solo books, isn't it, Candice?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think so, yes.
You don't know, I've got no chance. 8 award-winning solo books, as well as books with James Patterson. Welcome, and we're looking forward to a fantastic evening. Michael Duffy, who's the co-founder of Bad Sydney, is going to be interviewing Candice. He's a writer himself, but also he's helped Candice in the research for this book in ways which I don't know about. So I'm looking forward to hear about that. Now, just to let you know how we actually run the evening, we're going to, Michael is going to talk to Candice in just a moment. I'll get out of your way. And about 45 minutes in, 45 minutes in, he'll remind you to send any questions in through the Q&A function. So then he will ask Candice those questions. That I will come back for a couple of minutes at the end to say thank you very much. And just before I hand you over, I'd like to thank the City of Sydney, because they are incredibly helpful and we really wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. So, Michael and Candice, over to you.
Thanks Catherine. It's a pleasure, a real pleasure for me to be here with Candice, partly because I enjoy and admire her books so much, but also because she's been such a great supporter of our festival. She once ran a little trivia quiz for us and it was great fun. So Candice, thank you very much for your help over the years. I think we're in our 5th year now, and welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. Anything for Bad. This is such a fun festival and so many strange and different things, you know, so many activities. It's great. It's really great.
Yeah, we've had a good experience with crime writers as a whole, which is a bit surprising. I used to be a publisher and work with more literary authors, and some of them are pretty gloomy, especially the poets. Although I suppose that comes from reading their royalty statements. But I think crime writers are often very friendly. Is that a problem for the brand? Do you ever think you should be a bit more gloomy?
I was actually saying this today, that crime writers are the least precious kind of writers. That, you know, I've hung out with a whole bunch of different people, different genres at festivals, and crime writers are the best. I think we have the best sense of humor of any genre, and I think that it's probably because we engage in such dark material that you just can't sustain that kind of gloominess all day long, every day while you're writing, you know, for years and years at a time. You got to break it up. You got to deal with it somehow. So yeah, we're definitely funny and dark kind of people. And you get audience laughs because I think that audiences come and expect you to be gloomy and for the talks to be serious, and then you crack jokes and it's like, it's funny enough, and then it's extra funny because they weren't expecting it. Hopefully.
Yeah, it's different. Michael Rowbotham's pretty friendly, and Megan Golden. Celine Osbourne, she's a sweetie. I never met Peter Temple, but apparently he could be a bit grumpy, but I don't know.
I have heard that. Yeah. I just went out with a couple of crime writers with Solari and Chris Hammer the other night, and I had a brilliant time. And then I got home and I was trying not to wake up my husband or my daughter, so I didn't turn any lights on when I came into the house, and I was brushing my teeth and I went, oh, this doesn't taste right. And I realized it was nappy cream that I had used. And I thought, oh yeah, that's a sign of a good night out, right?
The joys of being a parent, that's right. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about your new book, The Chase. And then I think I'd like to talk about your last one, Gathering Dark, because I like that a lot too.
Oh, cool.
And then we'll talk about the rest of your books to the extent that we have time. As Catherine said, I think you're up to about 14 now. By many writers' standards, that's a career. So there's lots to talk about. The Chase, I thought was pretty fabulous. Let's give our audience the setup just so they can understand it. And I'm going to steal an idea from your Facebook page here. I want you to pretend that you've just turned up at some radio station. I'm the security guard, and you just got to explain to me who you are. So I'm here, and you walk in the door, and I say, "What you want? What you want?"
This actually happened. Yeah. Okay. So I went to the ABC, and the security guard said, "What are you here for?" And I said, "A radio interview." And,
you're the writer? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a writer. Yeah, I've written a book.
What's the book about?
It's about a mass breakout in the US where 200 prison inmates go running into the desert, and terrorists have held up the prison.
Oh my God.
It's
crazy. Does anyone get killed?
It's fiction. It's fiction.
And when's the movie coming out?
Well, we've actually just tied up the rights to this with a company in the US. I haven't put pen to paper to sign a contract yet, so I'm not going to say anything more about it. But if you are trying to buy the rights to this, you may be slightly late by the time this airs.
I'll tell them about it.
Yeah,
Talking of screen time, the ABC, it's right, isn't it? They're making a series about some of your other books.
Yes. So in Australia, the ABC will air Troppo, which is made from my Crimson Lake series. Crimson Lake, the original title of that book was Troppo. And the screen people, the producer heard that and said, I love that for a title. And I said, so did I, but they ended up changing it. The publisher ended up changing it. So we have Thomas Jane starring as Ted in that series, and we are just about to announce who has scored the role of Amanda. And you know, people in the television world, when you're a writer, they only tell you if you ask. So I've been asking every now and then, and I've just heard that they've cast a whole bunch of other characters. And I said, when are they going to cast the geese? Because Ted has a little family of geese that he cares for, and they sort of rescue him at the same time as he rescues them. And I don't know how they're going to handle that, getting this little geese family and getting them to do what they want on screen. You know, they say never work with kids or animals, so
it'll be fun.
I don't envy them that job.
Although from my memory of the book, they've got to walk in line, don't they? So there could be a bit of training going on there. That's right. Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, probably the security guy doesn't watch the ABC, but he can catch it on iView when it comes out.
Yeah.
The Chase. So it's based on a crazy good idea. And I think ideas fascinate normal people because we don't get them that often. Any notion where this one came from for you?
The publishers were saying to me, we want you to write something big, like a big, it's a one-line sell for what is the concept. It's a big concept, and because a lot of my work previously has been, it's really about the characters, whereas they really want to sell the plot this time, and they were bandying around terms like big breakout novel. And anyone who knows, the scene in Australia, the crime writing scene would say I've sort of broken out already, but they wanted me to break out again. So I think that the term breakout like made its way into my brain. And have always been a huge fan of prison fiction. You know, people have said this novel is like Con Air meets The Fugitive. And I watched all that stuff when I was a kid. The Great Escape. Recently, Escape at Dannemora is something that was real. I was captured by that. And so I was just sort of talking to my husband, and I said, what hasn't been done? Because as an author, you're always trying to find out what hasn't been done, what perspective haven't we explored, that kind of thing. And I said, you know, we've done one guy breaks out, we've done a couple of guys break out. We haven't really done a big breakout novel focused on women, but I just had Gathering Dark. And I just took it, I was like, what if 12 people break out? What if they all break out? You know, and I just sort of, that's how you do, you kind of go, what if, until you get somewhere and you go, no, that's too crazy. And then you just come back just a little bit from there. I started with that.
Mm-hmm. I should say to our audience that in my day job, I work for corrective services, and I had the pleasure of taking Candice through Lithgow Correctional Centre, which is a maximum security facility west of Sydney, while she was doing some research. And I'd like to welcome, we've got some people coming in tonight from Lithgow, from the library.
Lithgow. I love your town.
And also from Goulburn, once again, from the library, not the jail. So you're most welcome here. I didn't actually see all that many traces of Lithgow in the book, but that might partly be because the book's based a lot on death row, and we don't actually have one of those in Lithgow. Was that true? Was it particularly helpful?
It was particularly helpful to go to Lithgow simply because I wanted that atmosphere. I had not felt that at all since I'd been to death row in the US. So I did go to death row at San Quentin. I was visiting a serial killer at the time, and I'm sure we'll get to that bit. But I want to talk about Lithgow because it was actually, even though it's hard to see it in there in the novel, it was really, really inspiring to me, simply because, like, you drive up there and there's just this atmosphere of, the walls are there, you feel tiny, you feel like a tiny little, piece of this big machine, and you're being swallowed up by it. And there's just a tension in the air. I don't know if you felt it as well when you're walking around, that there's this, sense that something's going to happen. Is it today, or is it this minute, or is it that minute? And I don't know if you were there at the moment that I walked up to those emergency response people. There are a bunch of guys in like tactical gear and vests, helmets and all this kind of stuff, and they were all sort of standing in a group, and I walked up to them and I said, first I asked the governor, can I talk to those guys? And she said, yeah. And I went and I said, hey, I'm a writer, I'm here doing some research. And I said, has anything happened? Can you tell me anything crazy? And they sort of thought for a minute, and they were like, has anything crazy happened? And then they went, oh yeah, there was a stabbing like this morning, and then they were like, oh yeah, we had that thing with the fight with the guy, and he pulled the knife and he tried to stab the other guy, and one guy's in a heart, and it's like, from this morning you've already kind of forgotten that. Like, this is the kind of daily violence that happens in this place. It's I just find prisons are like another planet. And when I go in there, I'm like, whoa, I smell the air and look at the people who live here and try to figure out how they live. And then I go back to planet Earth and I go, whoa.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's like the idea of what's normal shifts, doesn't it, subtly? And inmates are really good at looking at you all the time, but you don't know they're looking at you. There's something spooky about that. You turn around and they're just looking away or something.
Yeah. So one of the most powerful moments of us being there, and you said to me later that was one of the scariest times you'd ever experienced, is when we went into that workshop and all the guys were there and they were sewing hospital sheets and hospital scrubs, and you or someone was telling me that they get a certain amount of money for doing the work, and then they get a certain amount of money for turning up. So it reminded me a little bit of like a high school woodwork shop where you got guys just slacking off, just sitting on counters in groups, and you got people actually working on stuff. And there were these two guys doing laps of the room, and then they, as they went past us, it ended up being there were 4 guys suddenly, and then there were 6 guys. And I think the governor at that point just said, all right, we got to go. And we all just left, because you could feel like as soon as you walked in, the tension started going, because someone should make a gesture, someone should do something, because
That's scary. As we said before, the book's mainly about, death row is a really important part of it. And we had a nice girl like you. I've got to learn about death row. I know it wasn't at Lithgow.
No, look, I've had prisons in my life for a very long time. My dad was a parole officer at a Sydney prison, so he would take bring his crime stories home and tell them to my mum, and I would listen. And I grew up in a very strange household where I could get away with that kind of stuff, because at times I was one of 12 kids. My mum had 6, and then she would foster as much as she possibly could. And she fostered 155 kids as I was growing up. So my dad brought home his prison stuff, and my mum wanted to engage in that world. And she started writing to inmates, and was writing to 20 at her peak. And so I would read those letters as a kid. Not allowed to, but I would anyway. And then
you'd read the letters that they sent her, I guess, too, would you?
Sorry, what was that?
You'd read the letters that they sent her as well as the ones.
Yeah, the ones that came back. And I had a close encounter with a guy that she was writing to, because they would send her all this really crappy art, and a guy sent her a clock that he had made, and he'd written his name on the bottom. It's like signed it as a piece of art, and it was a strange name. I won't say what it is because it's a small world, but I went, what's that word? And my mum said, that's his name. And I was like, that's, I'm like 10 years old at the time. I'm like, that's a weird name. And then I went to dance class, and there were all these adults there having a morning tea, and they have the paper name tags. And I said to my mum, there's a guy, like my mum was waiting for me outside. I said, there's a guy in there who has the same name. And my mum was like, oh my God, and he'd just got out of prison. He'd been out of prison 2 weeks for violent sexual offences against children. Yeah. So he's right back on the hunting ground. And I just happened to be a very observant and nosy kid. And I noticed, but yes, I got to death row in San Quentin simply because I'm a crime writer. I do that kind of stuff. I get access like that, and it's not weird for me to say, hey, guess what? I'm really interested in serial killers. I think I'm going to go visit one. So that's exactly what I said to my husband. While we were living over there in LA, I said, I'm going to write to this serial killer, and if he says, okay, I'm going to go and visit him, because I have some questions. I didn't have a book planned at that time involving serial killers. I just was so horrified by him and what he had done that I had questions. So I wrote in, I was like, dear sir, I have some questions for you about what you did,
Wow. The Chase is a really fast book. Like, I think most of your novels, it's like some of your books are like taking methamphetamine or something, except they're legal. They're legal. It's almost a physical thing. Is that one of the things you're after, to really almost get your readers going physically?
Yes. I find that people in the crime genre are they're enjoying themselves the most when they're uncomfortable, because they're motivated to get comfortable again, to get to the answer, and people over the years have said to me, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was so distracted. I forgot to pick my kids up from school. And that's what I'm looking for, is that kind of thing. You know, people will flip pages because they want to find out, is John Kradle really innocent? Does he deserve to be on death row? And what happened to Celine? And are they going to catch these guys? Because if you think about the book as a physical object, if you can get people in and get them invested, it's there in their hands, and they're sort of saying, well, I've invested this much, you know. So if there happens to be a lull, you're never aiming for a lull as an author, but it's security that if there is a lull, they go, well, I've invested this much, I'll just give it one more chapter, and then they're turning pages again, you know. You never want them to feel safe to put the book down, because that's when they might not come back to it.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Books, I mean, film is fast too. What do you reckon? Have you ever thought about it? What can books do that film can't?
It's
Because they
books
are different, aren't they? Yeah.
It's the real access all areas into the characters' emotions, I think, and their backstory, and it's you spend longer with that character and you're deeper into their psyche, and you know, it's hours upon hours upon hours, you know. I mean, it's 16 hours or something to read a book, and I just think it's more intimate. It's much more intimate,
right? And one of the nice things about the chase is that while the chased are all guys, the chasers are women, aren't they? Which I thought was a really nice dichotomy.
Yeah, I have thrown off my for my first 3 or 4 novels, I had a real anxiety about writing women, because I don't know, as a woman, I have always felt very, very different, and like I don't fit in with other women. I don't have any friends, for example, who know each other, who are women. I have singular friends. And when I go to a pub and I see 10 women all dressed up very nicely and they're all drinking white wine and laughing their heads off, I go, what is this? How did this happen? I've never really understood that. And so I felt like my women on the page were either coming out as like flouncy, wimpy sex kitten types, or they were coming out very, very masculine, and I wanted to write real women. So I just had a few goes at it, you know, and you can tell from my how my women change. Like Eden Archer in the Bennett Archer series, she's very sexy and very perfect and almost unreal in how I mean, she's a serial killer, but she's like perfect, and she's sort of that woman that I was aspiring to, I think. And then you think about Amanda Farrell in the Crimson Lake series, and she's a lot closer to who I am. Like, she's a bit odd and very flawed, and sometimes says the wrong thing and can't read the room. And that's, so I took the extremes of someone who I'm never going to be Eden Archer. And Amanda is at the other end, and in between, I've got real women.
Yeah, no, it's good. You'll need some more tattoos to be just like her, but
yeah.
I like. Yeah, just talking about Gathering Dark for a moment, which is your last book, which I really like. It's set in LA. It's a standalone, I believe, and it's got this detective. Because it struck me, women are often victims in crime fiction, or they're good detectives, but she kind of manages to be both at once on almost every page, which I thought was fantastic.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Jessica Sanchez has a really hard time in that book, and Blair as well. Both of those women are just having a very hard time and trying to fight through it. I wrote that book while I was pregnant, and it was really hard to write. It was basically the hardest time I have ever had writing a book. Was writing that one, because my brain was just broken, and I couldn't plot, and I couldn't figure out who these women were, and that kind of thing. But they ended up being so much fun and so real to me, that I'm very proud of them, and I would really like to see them on the screen. I'd really like to write them again, because yeah.
Beat them again. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I like to put characters together who really shouldn't be together, because I think that the most boring fiction is when the team gets on and they're all high-fiving. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, and it's fantastic. I hate that. I really
You don't enjoy
like
Sherlock
people.
Holmes?
Sorry, Sherlock and
I'm
Holmes.
thinking you don't enjoy Sherlock Holmes. It's like a fan club, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I read a lot of Sherlock Holmes when I was a teenager. But even then, you got Sherlock is the freak in that relationship, and Watson is the grounded guy who's like, really, there's a little bit of oddness to their relationship, but I like my characters to learn how to work together across the page, because that's the growing and changing of the character is what people like to see.
That's good. One of the themes in some of your recent books are people who have been accused of things that they didn't actually do, which I really like, because I suppose one of the things about crime fiction is it's real life writ large, and lots of us feel a bit misunderstood, and this is just taking being misunderstood to an extreme, isn't it?
Yeah. I just think that being incarcerated for something that you didn't do would just be hell on earth. It's the worst thing I can imagine. There just would be no hope in that situation. You see these journeys of these guys who get accused of something and then DNA frees them after 35 years or something, and you think, how did you survive that? Because when I visited the serial killer in San Quentin, it was like going to another planet. And when I was sitting there with him, I knew, because I had just come through this doorway into death row, and I knew that if you just went out that doorway, it was maybe 5 meters away, and it was open, and it was looking out onto a brick walkway. I knew that if you went out there and you just looked right, you would see this spectacular view of San Francisco Bay, and the water was glittering with sunshine, and there's boats and there's people and clouds and all kinds of stuff. And I could walk through the door and look that way anytime I wanted, but he probably never would again. And it was only 5 meters away. You could throw a rock. And it's like, that must be what it's like, when you think about the victims' families, their family members are, and what has happened is so close. If you think to yourself, I could just go back and stop what happened or fix what happened. If there's something that I did, it's just beyond the door there, but no, you can't access it. It's gone. That person's gone. Just really, really interesting. Lawrence was the serial killer, Lawrence Bittiker, and he was living in a cage, really, 11 feet by 6 feet, and the front of it was steel mesh, because one of the inmates had tried to stab a guard he had actually stabbed him with a piece of wood. So they took the bars down and they put mesh there, and he's just there for 23 hours a day in a box. For 38 years he'd been on the row. Yeah. And I just think, how do you survive that? How do you not go crazy?
Can I ask you about, you've written books set in America and set in Australia, the sort of differences. I don't know, is setting a book in America partly a commercial decision, but is it also creatively liberating in the sense that you can believe almost anything happening in America? It's such a weird place of extremes, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Particularly Los Angeles. I went to LA and I lived there, and I just thought, this is the land of possibility, which most people probably think when they get to Hollywood. They say magic things happen here. There's so many things that, like I said, I like things and people don't belong right next to each other, having to work together, and you arrive in LA and you're driving down Sunset Boulevard, and there's an enormous billboard, and it's got Dwayne Johnson wearing a $50,000 watch covered in diamonds, and his skin looks perfect, and underneath that enormous billboard is like a homeless camp, and people are, you know, going to the toilet in buckets and shooting up, and, you know, living under tarps and things, and you have extreme wealth right next to extreme poverty. It's just amazing. Like I said to my husband Tim, I have 3 goals for living in America. I said, I want to call 911, and in a separate incident, I want to be part of a crowd, and I want to say, someone call 911, you know what they do in the shows. And then I said, I want to be pulled over by a highway cop. And then when they come to the window, I want to roll the window down and say, what seems to be the problem, officer? And I got to do all 3 of those things in 6 months. In 6 months, I had them all done. And then as a bonus, I got to call a former president, Mr. President, to his face. I was like, yes.
I've got to ask you, why did you call 911?
You know what? We were just driving around.
That's cool, was it?
No,
Took it off the bucket list.
it was amazing. We were just driving around in LA. I think we'd gone to the post office or something totally random. It was the afternoon. I remember the sun was going down, and we were driving through this intersection, and there's this woman in the middle of the intersection, obviously a homeless woman she had a brown dress on, I remember, and she had a hammer in each hand, and she was just swinging them like at no one, at people who weren't there, like going, yeah, like this with the hammers. And I said to Tim, I think this is the time. I'm going to call 911. And so I dialed, and the woman was like, 911, what's your emergency? I said, I'm on the corner of wherever and wherever, in West Hollywood, and there's a woman and she's swinging through hammers, blah, blah, blah. And the lady said, has she actually hurt anyone yet? And I said, no, but I feel like it's imminent. She's swinging hammers at air zombies. And the woman was like, yeah, okay, I'll send a car. Like, you're obviously a tourist type of thing. If you think that is the most dangerous thing that is happening in Los Angeles at the moment, honestly, and I, there was another time where I called the police actually, because I found a box at the bottom of a ravine, and it was full of bullet holes, and there were bullet casings everywhere. And I sort of opened the lid, and it was full of like packing material. And I went, well, this is kind of crimey looking. And I called the police, and they had to walk all the way down into this ravine, and they were like, and they picked up the bullet casings, and they were like, yeah, someone's just been, using this box as target practice. And I was like, well, it could have been a body. Could have been.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's talk about writing more generally. Do you remember why you started putting marks on paper? I mean, it's a pretty solitary activity that for most people ends in sadness. It's not natural. Why did you start doing it?
I think that I lived in a very chaotic and crazy household, and I was looking for a bit of structure, power, because the phone rings in that household, and it's like, oh, okay, 3 kids are coming to live with us for an indefinite period. Like literally the night before my brother's wedding, Doc's called and said, hey, guess what? We've got these 3 kids. We found them walking around the car park of the Star City Casino. We don't know who their parents are. So can you take them? And then my mum called my brother and was like, hey, guess what? I'm bringing 3 kids to the wedding. And he was like, you can't, I don't have space. There's no food. And she's like, okay, good chat. Bye. Click. And so I think that when I was writing, there was nothing that was going to happen on the page that I didn't expect. And I was all powerful in that world. I was the decider of life, death, relationships, everything, from the color of the sky to the weather, whatever. Whereas in my household, you know, I was I'm in that middle of that pack of 6. And then there are random kids turning up all the time. And my parents have, you know, had a very tumultuous relationship. So there's that. My mum's constantly rescuing wild animals and things from the trash, and the house is semi-hoarded, and it's just a wave of madness. It kind of still is. And I just stay away from that stuff. But yeah, so I started writing, and my output just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And when I was 16, I was writing what I thought were novels. They were about 45,000 words. So that's a lot for a 16-year-old.
It's a commendable effort. That's very good. Who was the first supporter of your writing? Who was the first person who actually, you know, saw what you were doing and said, this is okay?
It would be my mum, because, you know, I was whinging at her about how seriously I was taking it. And I was saying, I want a laptop, and I said to her at 16, I said, I want to leave high school and become a famous author. And she's like, I think you're missing a few steps there. So high school to famous author. You know, and I was very unhappy at high school, being from a kind of a freaky family. And so she said, you know what, if you want to do this, you can do it as a side hustle. And if you ever become a famous author, then you can give up your day job, but you're going to get a day job. You're going to stay in high school. You're going to go to university. You're going to become like a journalist or an English teacher or something with words. And she sent me to TAFE to do creative writing when I was 16. And she paid for it. And that was her saying, I think you can do it. If you want to do it, you can do it.
That's good. I think you've got a friend out there.
I know. Because I think she knows I'm in here. And my husband will be trying to put her to bed now.
I'll be watching you. Looking at the books you published, do you reckon they've changed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, the first 3 had Gothic leanings, because the 4 novels that I wrote before that were all, they were all rejected. I accumulated over 200 rejection letters across those 4 and some others that I started, and they were all sort of supernatural type stuff. Vampires, werewolves. I was a huge Anne Rice fan, and I was also a very gloomy teenager. So the first crime novel that I ever wrote, Hades, was very vampy and very, you know, Dexter. I was watching Dexter at the time. So not very down to earth. You know, there's a serial killer running around Sydney stealing people's body parts, and he's riding a motorcycle, and he's dumping people in Sydney Harbour, and it's all very, you know, over the top. And then I went through a very realistic phase where you've got like Ted Concaffey, he's accused of something very believable. It's very police procedural. It's very grounded and atmospheric. And now I've swung back around again, and it's 600 inmates are all running free, and there's terrorists and serial killers, and people are getting punched out, and you know.
That's right. Jumping the
some
shark.
of that is probably the James Patterson effect.
Could be. Do you reckon over the years? I mean, do you feel you get better as a writer, or you just do different stuff, or is it get it harder or easier? What sort of changes do you feel, apart from when you've got a small child in the room?
It's definitely harder with a small child. Anyone who pretends that doing any job with a kid in your life is as easy or whatever, as you can no doubt hear, it's harder. But I hope that my writing has gotten better. But I mean, people say to me, I've read all of your books, and my favorite ones are the Bernard Archer ones, which are right at the beginning. So you think, well, what does that mean? Does that mean I haven't, does that mean I've got worse? Or is it just you prefer, you know? I certainly hope that I've gotten more diverse in my writing. Like if you said to me now, hey, Candice, can you write a steamy small town with a dark secret set in Darwin? I'd go, yeah, great. they say, can you write an action thriller set on a train? And I go, okay, good. Yeah, I'll do that. No problem. So hopefully.
Yeah, I guess the small child affects your work practices, but does it affect what you write at all? Like, could you write those gothic horror things now? Has having a child affected your view of the world in terms of what you write about? Because you wrote about some very, very, very horrific stuff back then, didn't you?
Yeah. I don't know. I definitely feel it more, and I'm more scared by what I'm writing. I'm planning something at the moment that I'm going to write with Jim, and it was my turn to do part of the outline. And I just outlined this scene where this guy is threatening this family. Oh dear, things are getting kind of out of control out there.
Think about that. Maybe it's a distraction from child rearing, like throwing the kids.
Oh yeah. This is what you get, I suppose. Anyway, I was writing this scene where he's threatening this family, and he's threatening, he's kind of implying that these people on this construction site are backing in and out with these trucks, and they better watch out for their toddler because, all drivers get distracted and accidents happen. And that's because it's something that scares me. And so I feel it. And so I've added that, so I don't know if you could say having a kid is more inspiring about terrifying things. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard.
Just a question about reading, if I might. Do you reckon, do men still read books, or many books? Do you think they read your books?
I've heard everything under the sun in terms of male readership. I have heard men say, "Oh, I never usually read female authors, but my wife made me read your book, and now I think it's great." But I've also had men write in and say, "Oh, this character is a wimp, and no man writer would ever write that," and all this kind of thing. Yeah, I've heard everything under the sun. I do definitely think that men still read, because I get a lot of them at my book talks, and they come to the the signing table. You know what? I probably get more fan mail from men. And that is, I think, because a man can write in private and nobody knows except me. And he says, "Hey, Candice, I really love your books. I can't wait to come to your book talk," or whatever. And then they just have a little fanboy moment in secret, maybe. I don't know. But most of my fan mail is from men. Yeah.
All right. A slightly odd question, but what's your weirdest? Have you got a memory of your weirdest encounter with a fan, whether it was in person or otherwise? Talking of letters, yeah.
There was this woman in Arizona. I was doing a gig in Arizona, and I was not popular. It was a writers festival, and I think I just got tacked on. And at that time in my career, it was like, who the hell is Candice Fox anyway, type of thing. I was only a couple of books in, but I was over there, and they said, "Hey, be part of this thing in Arizona." And I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And this woman came up, and she rushed in like she'd just sort of gotten up the courage to do it. She rushed over and she said, "Oh my God, Candice, I love you so much. I love all your books, and I've read them all. And I have this brooch, and it's an heirloom from my family. It's been with my family for generations. Please have it." And she was talking so fast, I kind of went, no, I can't possibly take this, and she went, "There you go, I want you to have it. Okay, bye." And then she ran away. And I was just left with this brooch that had been in her family for generations, and I kind of went, "Oh, okay." And I kept it, but I felt bad because I was like, who was that, and is this her great grandmother's brooch or whatever? That was weird. But yeah, I get all kinds of stuff. I've had people write to me and say, "Hey, Candice, the police reckon I killed my wife in 1985 and chopped her up and hid her under the M5. Do you want to know what really happened?" And I'm like, it's like, here's my number. No, thank you.
to
but
a point.
you know,
Yeah.
I get murder tips and stuff every now and then. People say, "Oh, I know, I have a piece of evidence in this murder case," and I go, "Oh, okay, sure. What do you know?" Yeah.
Okay. I should put out a call to people watching, by the way. If any of you would like to send in any questions, please do that now. It's a good time. We'll have a Q&A in a moment. Candice, you've written 14 books, and how easy is it for you to remember them all? Like, you must have dozens of characters, maybe hundreds of characters, dozens of plots out there. Do they just pop into your mind, or do you sometimes confuse them? Or what's it like carrying that around with you?
It's I remember the people more than I remember the plots. I sometimes will hear a song and I go, "Oh, Frank would love that," you know, because I know Frank as a person. And he's from those first 3 books. Somebody wrote to me the other day and he said, "Why does Hades kill Mr. Grey?" And I said, "I don't even know what book you're talking about." And he's like, "Oh, it's in this book. He shoots him in his kitchen." And I was like, "Man, I'm sorry, I don't know." That's like 11 books ago. I don't know. You got to sort of ask me at the time. Even, you know, The Chase has just come out, and Gathering Dark was the book before then. I got a vague idea of what happens in Gathering Dark, but I've had a human child since then, so yeah. But I remember those ladies and what those ladies are like and what they sound like. So if I had to pick those ladies up again and write those characters, no problem.
Oh,
I know Jessica Sanchez, what she looks like, what she would be wearing, what she would be doing, you know, just like they're people.
That's extraordinary. Okay, we've got some questions here. Someone really likes, this is Sharon Tollard from, I think from Lithgow, says that she likes the names of your characters, and just how much thought do you give to picking names?
Oh yeah. You know, it's the temptation with names, particularly the names of the main character, is to go really wacky, you know, and really memorable. And you've got to go all the way there and then ease back a little bit, because otherwise you end up with someone whose name is Kitty Winterbone, and it's just not relatable at all. So I sprinkle in some cool sounding things like Cradle and Harbor and that kind of stuff. And I sprinkle in some people who are in my life, like Blair Harbor. The name Blair is my publicist's middle name, and when she told me her middle name is Blair, I was like, "Oh, I like that. I'll use that." Celine is named for Celine Dion. I am a huge Celine Dion tragic. I would have named my daughter Celine, except we gave her my husband's surname, which is Keane, so it would have been Celine Keane, which is not good. Yeah, so I sprinkle in some stuff from my life, and then I just get them from everywhere. You know, what's good for name generation is going to a cemetery or driving around the streets. Street names make good surnames, and yeah, I get them from everywhere. Yeah. I think I've used Duffy because I was thinking about you, and I used Duffy somewhere.
John asked, "Do you have one? Is one of your books a favourite? And if so, why?" That's a cruel question, isn't it?
Yeah, I probably look. I have a great affection for Crimson Lake because I'm just really proud of it. I'm proud of how it turned out, and it was the first time I'd sort of done 3 crimes for the price of 1. So it was the most ambitious thing that I had done at the time. And I also wrote Crimson Lake at the same time that I was writing Never Never with James Patterson. So if you think about the pressure, I'm writing with the world's greatest, you know, best-selling author for the first time, trying to impress him so I can maybe make it an ongoing gig. And I'm writing Crimson Lake. I nearly went insane, and it turned out all right. So I'm proud of it. And I'm proud of Gathering Dark as well, because that was the hardest. That was even harder than Crimson Lake, because I was so, you know, yeah, I was just so broken in the brain. Yeah.
It was a good job. Here's another one from an anonymous attendee. if you weren't a writer, is there another career you could see yourself having?
Oh, I've done every job under the sun, and I worked in a tattoo shop. That was a great job, but the hours are really late. So I don't like them. But I did work in a tattoo shop in King's Cross for a long time, and I like the constant the stories, people coming with the stories, and it's like Saturday night, Fitzy and Jacko gone out to the pub, and Fitzy lost a bet, so now he's got to have Jacko tattooed on his butt and all this, or you've got, I'm getting this tribute tattoo because my dad died, and here are some stories about my dad, but the one thing about working in a tattoo shop is there's a lot of downtime, so there's a lot of talking to the other artists and the piercer, and there's chit chat all day, and you never get anything done. I was trying to write novels at the same time, and it's a very distracting job. So probably tattoo shop, or I have also taught kindergarten, and I love little kids. So I would teach kindergarten. I love craft, and I love little kids, and I love singing. So
you'll be right. Okay, that's
yeah.
good. Anyway, the way things are going, you probably won't need another career. Here's one from Susie, who asks, could you smell the fear at Lithgow Jail? Susie says, I spent 11 years teaching in Goulburn Jail, and I could smell the fear when sadly awful dramas were happening or just before. And I guess that goes to your visits to American prisons too.
Yeah. It's tension, and I walked into that room and everyone just looks at you. I don't know, I have said this before in interviews, and maybe Michael, that nobody knew I was coming, did they? The inmates?
I doubt it very much.
Yeah, because they were very surprised, and there were these looks. They were giving each other looks like, who's that, and what should we do? Should we do something? And there was so the air immediately changes, and there's not. Everyone's trying to be subtle about what they've noticed, like you say, the corner of their eyes, and they're always watching, and everyone's always watching. And then I remember that when we walked in, there were guards or officers, and they changed position without me seeing. So I was thinking later about how the inmates are always watching the guards, and they don't want them to know they're watching. And then the guards are always watching the inmates, but they don't want them to know that they're watching. And everyone's moving and circulating. It's kind of like I took Violet to the aquarium for the first time ever the other day, and you look at the shark tank, and the shark tank has a whole bunch of other fish in it. And you think to yourself, I don't want to be one of those fish, because it's like, no matter how well they feed the shark, they feed him the same time every day, he gets the same stuff, he's always really well fed. There's something in that shark that's going to make him just go, I want to eat something that's alive. I want to eat that, I don't care. Maybe I'm full and I don't need it, but I'm going to eat you, and you're just that fish going, no, why couldn't I have been in the stingray tank? Come on, it's like that.
Yeah, well, here's another one from Anne, who asks, what is your daily writing practice? Do you get up at dawn and write a few sentences, or do you just power on through the day?
I have to get up at dawn because that's when Violet gets up. If I had my druthers, I would be getting up at 9 or 10 before she was born. I used to get up at 10 or something. No, there's none of that. No. On a Wednesday and Thursday are my big writing days when she goes to the in-laws. So I sort of write from about 9 a.m. to about 2 on those days. Friday and Monday, I sometimes get a couple of hours to squeeze in when my mother comes and takes Violet. But it's all around Violet. But I have always been a writer who can write anywhere, anytime. So if like I was in Germany, I was doing a book tour through Germany, and the publicist said to me, okay, we're here at the train station. Our train will come in exactly 21 minutes. So we're gonna sit here at this cafe and wait. And I said, okay, great. I opened my laptop and I went, brrr, choop. You know, I set my timer, and when it hit 20 minutes, I went, choop. And she went, how do you do that? How did you just open it and then do it and then shut it and then that's it? And I said, well, I knew what I was going to write next. So I just went in there. I just opened the door and went in there and then made the people, and then, you know.
Yeah, extraordinary.
That's lucky. That's really lucky, because I think Mark Brandy, I heard the other day, has to have a special room and the sound cancelling headphones, and he draws all the curtains so it's dark, and that's never going to work in my life at the moment.
That's right. He writes short books, so he probably doesn't take as much time. Hey, we've got one here from Sharon Tollard. Says, hi from Lithgow Library. Will Celine and Trinity team up in another novel?
I would love them to, yeah, because I think they're terrible together, and it just makes so much fun for trying to get them on the same page about anything. I kind of enjoyed, some of it got cut out. There was more teasing between Trinity sort of teasing Celine and saying, you know, you're sleeping with an inmate and you're short and you don't know what you're doing, you're a little hysterical person, and there was a little bit more of that. And in the original draft, Trinity actually punched her or slapped her upside the head or something, and I think that got cut. So I would test the boundaries more if I got them together in another novel. They would be funny. Yeah, so I would definitely write another Chase, and if the TV series you know, gets up for that, there may be an opportunity that you know, they might end up saying to us, yes, it would be the best thing for you to do right now would be to write another one of those. I'm just in a stage in my career where I am surrounded by wonderful people, marketing people, publishers, editors, and they seem to know exactly what's best for me to do next. So I'm following their advice, which, you know, that's.
Well, we all look forward to seeing what is next anyway on a couple of different fronts, but yeah. I might wrap it up here because I've only got 2 minutes left, and I know Catherine wants to say a few words. So Candice, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Bye-bye. Catherine.
And I've just popped back in magically. I have to say, Candice, that was such a wonderful interview. And Michael, the idea of a writer who, if she weren't a writer, would either work in a tattoo shop or a kindergarten is just sort of mind-boggling, really, and I think maybe says it all. I've had a couple of messages saying, geez, this is good. This is one of the best things I've ever heard. So I think you both can feel very pleased with yourselves. It was just really good to get an overall sense. I also love the idea of the writer as all-powerful, except when she, in this case, has a child next door. But yeah, you can control the world on paper, if not in real life. So look, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope the people who joined us from libraries will come back for more. Our next online event isn't till later in the year, probably about July, but we've got some face-to-face events, and we have got this fantastic book podcast, which we're launching in a couple of days. Jump on our website, have a look, and just let us know what you think on our Facebook book club as well. You know, that's always a great, people will interact and you'll have a bit of an exchange with people. Thank you, both of you again. Thank you to the City of Sydney. And if you haven't got your book, go to Booktopia and get the book and the other books right now. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you again in a couple of months. Bye.